Alright, today we're going to be talking about the difference between integers, but this is a more fundamental lesson to cover some future lessons when we start talking about integers between and integers from and up to and including. This illustration I was taught by my math teacher growing up, and I think it works great. It's a great conceptual visual that will help you remember how to differentiate between these types of basically wording. Okay, so for example, when a problem says what is the difference between these two, you know to subtract. But here's the visual, and it's basically a fence. Okay, so what do we have? First of all, we have 4 fence posts, right? Or no, 5. I'm sorry, we have 5 fence posts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these red numbers down here denote how many fence posts we have. The second thing I want you to notice is how many fence posts do we have between the two end posts. Okay, so we have the left end post and the right end post. These green numbers denote how many fence posts are between the end posts. The third set of numbers I want you to look at are the blue numbers. That's how many sections of fence there are. Okay, this is the first section, this is the second, this is the third, and this is the fourth. So there's 3 different ways to look at this fence, and just like there's 3 different ways to look at this fence, there's 3 different ways to look at comparing two integers as far as subtraction goes. For this lesson, we are focusing on fence sections. And so notice, if I wanted to do 5 minus 1, in other words, the right end post minus the left, it would give me how many fence sections there are. 4. So for simple subtraction problems, the best way to think of it is these blue fence post sections. 5 minus 1 is 4. So let's read this together. The number of fence sections represents the difference between 5 and 1. In other words, it's what happens when you subtract 5 minus 1. To find the difference between two numbers, just subtract the larger number b, in this case 5, minus the smaller a. So the difference between two integers is simply b minus a. Again, this might seem really obvious, but this will help you. This is foundational in order to understand how to find how many integers are between two integers and how many integers are up to and include both the integers from the left and right, or the smaller and the larger. So let's start out with 6 minus 9. It's just a simple subtraction problem. You just do the bigger minus the smaller, which is negative 3. Again, another way to think about this problem is, you could do negative 9 plus 6. Battery's getting low here. You could do negative 9 plus 6, or you could just see that you're starting with a bigger number and you're subtracting, starting with a smaller and subtracting a bigger, so the answer is going to be negative. Actually, the other way to do this is to do 9 minus 6, which is 3, and just make it negative since it's 6 minus 9, so you know it's going to be a negative number. All right, next question, we have negative 10 minus 9. Now, the trick for this one is just do 10 plus 9, which is 19, and then make the answer negative because they're both negative. Okay, this is more or less a review from a previous lesson. But again, if you start with a negative number and subtract, you're moving to the left of the number line, so your answer has to be negative. And it's just like taking the 2 positives and making it negative. Next, we have 27 minus 19. This is a simple subtraction problem. The answer is not 12. I can't believe that I actually wrote that. Wow. So sometimes you just, miss it on some days, right? So the answer there, I'm glad I caught that, is 8. One way to do this problem is 27 minus 19. Okay, since you can't subtract 9 from 7, you borrow 1 from the 2. And that makes 17. 17 minus 9 is 8. 1 minus 1 is 0. So the answer is 8. So that's a simple subtraction problem. Nothing fancy about that one. Here's 1 minus 111, which gives you negative 110. Another way of doing this is 111 minus 1 is 110, and make the answer negative since you're subtracting a bigger number from a smaller one. So again, all of this is finding the difference between two numbers. One way this might be written is, what's the difference between 1 and 111? A way to read this one might be, what's the difference between 27 and 19? This one would be, what's the difference between negative 10 and 9? What's the difference between 6 and 9? So, but we normally write it out because it's just more clear, right? Here, what's the difference between 13 and negative 14? Well, what you would do is you would take the bigger and subtract the smaller. So it would be 13 minus negative 14, which we know becomes a positive. So it's 13 plus 14, which gives you 27. Therefore, the difference between 13 and negative 14 is 27. Now, you can actually see this on the number line. Here's negative 14 way over here, okay? And here's 13, and here's 0, not quite in the middle. And you can see that there's going to be 27 total hops between the two. 14 hops here, right? And also 13 hops here. So the difference between them is the number of spaces on the number line. That's another way of seeing subtraction problems, or the difference between two numbers. All right, that one kind of glitched out on me. All right, last one. We have negative 27 minus 5. Again, you can add 27 and 5 and make it negative, and the answer would be negative 32. That's it for finding the difference between two integers. It's as simple as the number of spaces on the number line, or the number of fence sections between the two numbers, if you will. If you have any other questions about the difference between two integers, let me know.